At Cooper Airlines, we have a website where customers can sign up for our loyalty program and manage their points and preferences. In this demo, Brendan plays the role of a developer who creates a messaging layer to achieve data consistency in our loyalty data across a variety of endpoints, including Salesforce, DynamoDB, Amazon S3, and Snowflake. Brendan will then demonstrate how we use a file transfer service from S3 to trigger an outbound email when new customers join our program. And finally, he'll show a data pipeline between Snowflake and Postgres that fuels our analytics and reporting for better insights into how to optimize our loyalty program.
So going to this demo, we have that loyalty front end that's going to get invoked, and it's going to call the rest of these integrations via HTTP, but it's going to really be centered around that Lambda function. So here within typical cloud integration, I see you have a couple of different apps that we're going to walk through that are going to supply all the data and perform the actions of this. So we're going to go right into our Lambda function, our application here, and I'll see it's pretty simple. It's just going to have that receive a random trigger, which can be invoked from really anywhere. This is going to give us that horizontal scalability because we might have 10, we might have 10,000 users accessing this at the same time. So we need to be able to manage that at a really high scale. The really great thing about that trigger, though, is I'm managing this trigger and the setup the same way I would a Salesforce one, HTTP, timer. It's one unified interface to manage this and actually deploy this out to my own AWS instance. So it gives me the ability to configure it in one unified interface, but have that be leveraged in lots of different ways. From here, we have different steps it's going to go through. So we have several different routing logic. We're going to go and get that data from Salesforce, figure out, does this customer exist or not? We can see with that detail that I can actually pass in runtime parameters in my query and be able to dynamically select what individual this is. So it's going to operationally tell me how this path is going to continue. From there, I look and get that information from Dynamo. So I want to figure out this user exists. What tier are they? So I'm going to get that data back, log some information, then I can see in my configuration logic here what that looks like. So this is where I can dictate what type of user that is. Is their loyalty points over 100 but less than 200? That's going to give them that middle tier that's going to allow me to then return back the correct information to the calling service. And I can see that on those same privileged, basic, or exclusive, what that looks like, all the data mappings, what's being passed across, everything from that query parameter. So I'm going to route this appropriately and get to them the right data at the right time back to that calling function from this flow. Separately, I can see in the bottom flow, if that user does not exist already, I have a couple of steps I'm going to be walked through. I'm going to be able to create that record in Salesforce. I'm going to add that information so that way I have a record of that individual. I'm going to push that message out to typical cloud messaging and our Kafka method. That's going to allow me to then have subsequent subscribers take that and work through the data pipeline to get that user added in all the appropriate systems that we have in place. I'm then going to go through and just like we had queried, I'm going to add that DynamoDB record and resulting back get the information around what that operation was, the fact that it's a new user, which as we talked about in Nate's intro, can trigger off that new voucher via an email. So this is going to give me really all the logic layer that exists for this integration in one consolidated package.
Hey, Brendan, I just want to cut in here. So you've actually pushed your app into Cooper Airlines' private AWS instance as a Lambda function. It's just worth calling out here. TIBCO is the only vendor that allows native development and deployment for serverless and function as a service environments. And you did that right from typical cloud integration. It looks like you're designing, any other app on the platform. So if you could move over to AWS and just show, if you refresh here, we've pushed that function over. So now it's natively within AWS. So it could be monitored with AWS primitives like CloudWatch for logging or X-Ray for tracing. So this lets our DevOps or SRE at Cooper consume and monitor, how they want to. Sorry to steal your thunder, Brendan, back to you.
So now that we've gone through that, we see that the function's been updated, we have that routing logic. Let's go take a look at that actions that occur when it is a brand new user on this. So we're going to have our subscriber for our brokered service, which we're going to see is going to be receiving those typical cloud messaging, TCM messages, and it's going to push the data over to Snowflake, which will then create that voucher file. One of the other things I can see here is with that trigger, some of the details around how we get that message for the brokerage service. So we can see if we want that to be durable, where the messages are going to be preserved for the subscriber when they get disconnected, if they want it to be sync or async, and we can have a content matcher to specify that attribute and match the incoming message within that TCM typical cloud messaging trigger. So very simple workflow, simple setup. But again, one of the great things is that as a developer, I have these unified interfaces which all have very standard schema definitions and interaction models that I can go and push that data into Snowflake. I'm going to get that information back and get that voucher from my S3 bucket, and then I'm going to perform that send to give that user their voucher based upon their registration. So that kind of completes the, if you're a new user, you've got your result set, you've got a trigger back to you telling you where your status is. If you're a brand new user, you get that new voucher file. But the other part of this is that data pipeline. So I want to make sure that when these users come in, we're synchronizing that across all of our different environments. And I can see that with our data pipeline. So this allows me to grab that newly generated data, go through and add it to my on-prem Postgres database. I see the same thing for inputs. I have that basic, but I also see with the iterator that this actually is going to do some more complex logic. It's going to make sure if I have multiple records to insert, it's going to work through that in one unified flow, and then update that Snowflake database to tell me that that data has been synchronized. So as part of this whole process, the consistency of data across multiple applications, we have multiple injection points where we can be listening for those different datas, change data capture, and make sure that we're propagating that across all the systems that are required in order to have that complete image. And for our last portion of this, we're going to go over the last little magic trick is how we actually run this on-prem. So we go back to our environment and tools and our hybrid connection. Just as easily as we push a cloud app, I simply have to enable our on-prem data services, select the appropriate access key. So now that's enabled, we can now have that data push and pull via our hybrid agent to those on-prem data stores. Next up, we're going to do a brief demo. So we're actually going to show the process by which we've, the results of the process we've just kind of gone over. So we're going to be able to enter in our individual into our loyalty program website, which we talked about before. It's going to be that lightweight. So we're going to put James Matthew in here. And then hit continue, and we're going to be able to see that information that's brought back by the integrations we've seen that are now live. So I can see the tier that James is in, the points that he has, the balance he's got, and then some basic contact information around James as well.